You can't. Ambrose was stunned. Never before had Grace ever raised her voice to him like that. Deportment was a virtue instilled in her by an old money family. For several heartbeats, Ambrose stared at his wife in quiet disbelief. As in all things, Ambrose weighed his words precisely before committing them to speech or to parchment. I will write whatever I damn well please, he growled. But you can't, Grace continued, her voice cracking. A fat tear broke free and rolled down her cheek. I won't let you do this, not to her. Ambrose leaned back from his typewriter and reached for his deck of Chesterfields. He slid a cigarette out and tapped it thoughtfully against the packaging. Grace never understood what a writer's job really was. She had married him despite his nouveau riche status because, in her social circles, it meant something to introduce herself as Mrs. Ambrose Bachman. With each of his novels, she enjoyed the fruits of her husband's expanding popularity and influence. Twice, he was shortlisted for a Pulitzer, and she just knew that one day he could be a contender for a Nobel. It might even be for this next book, the one that was half written, the manuscript which was stacked on the pages beside his typewriter at that very moment. And that idea was what made it all the worse. A magazine story would have been more forgiving. She knew those didn't have much staying power, but novels, on the other hand, those often outlived their authors, and the secrets they disclosed could be scrutinized for generations. Ambrose lit a cigarette and gave a deep pull. He mulled the situation over, tasting the smoke, letting it linger in his lungs and on his tongue. First of all, she's gone, he said. Nobody is doing anything to her anymore. Second, this is fiction. Nobody's going to know a thing. I'll know, Grace continued, and my family. And don't you think that our friends will put the pieces together? Why can't you just leave this be? Let it rest. Let her rest. No, Ambrose said, I really can't. You have other material, other stories. What makes this one so important? Because it's the truth, Ambrose said. Telling the truth is what writers do. The ones worth reading, anyway. This is my sister. Grace's voice shook with anger. Do you know nothing of loyalty? Of course I do. But a writer's loyalty is to the story, Ambrose said. The story that needs telling. It's possibly the most important one I've ever turned out on this here mill. How can you expect me to walk away from that? Story, Grace scoffed. It's not a story. It's her life. What gives you the right? Never bothered you before, Ambrose chided. What's that supposed to mean? Suited you fine when I was telling tales about those grifters your family used to summer with. Didn't mind letting me pull some dough out of that. They had it coming to 'em. And your folks don't? Grace looked as though she'd been slapped. See, Ambrose pressed on. You think it's your sister you're protecting by having me kill the story. It's not, is all. Any reader can see that she's the real victim. Their beef will be with your parents. They're the ones with her blood on their hands. The two had reached an impasse. It wasn't unexpected. Grace had assumed that Ambrose would not listen to reason. He was always so irrational when it came to his work, his stories. What did surprise her was how many valid points he had raised. She was a hypocrite, and she had so willingly dished the dirt on her shady cousins who had grifted the rich with their arbitrage scheme a decade before. Grace had celebrated when her husband turned the tale into a novel that exposed the naivete and idiocy that ran rampant with old money. She also knew that Ambrose was right about her sister. Her death was her parents' fault. Even they understood that. Why else would they build such a gaudy memorial for her, while virtually ignoring the other children that they had lost to outbreaks of measles and influenza? The library that bore her sister's name dominated the city center. For the foreseeable future, everyone would know the name Matilda Teal. They'd know her name, but they'd never know why. But Grace would. Grace could never forget.